You can run, but you can't hide, and you will cower from the clipboard of power. Sage Kotzenberg and Jay Stone's K2 Antidote is gonna get judgment today.
Oh, it's got edges.
A lot of hype for this board to live up to. It's Sage Kotzenberg's freeride board of choice, according to K2. He sat down with Jay Stone and they built the perfect backcountry freestyle board. But there is so much tech packed in here, lots of carbon, lots of 3D shaping. Stef Zeestraten is taking it to town here in Cardrona.
First run on the K2 Antidote 159. This is a little bit of Sage inspiration, and quite keen to see if this cambered but kind of directional at the same time machine lives up to its expectations. Game on, let's roll. All right, let's see if this left wall opener up. Oh, it's got edges. Whoop. Woohoo! Oh, it's so fluid and smooth. All right, turning in. Woo. Yeah. Oh, sticky slush. Fluid like the snow right now. Woo, woo. Wee. All right, K2 Antidote, lap 1. We're on the 159. First impressions, well, fluid, smooth, definitely a smooth operator. Has some wicked kind of torsional pop and liveliness to it, so there must, whatever the forks or whatever's going on inside the board is definitely hitting my fancy, to be honest. It's got lots of kind of ping and pop, but it's quite smooth. It's not like jerky, which is really nice. Holds a good edge, rides like a traditional camber board, and still feels like it can be a freeride board because it's got that nose and tail situation, and if you set it back further, this would be a pretty fun thing in the powder. In the slush, we definitely had some slush release going on right now, and it held up really good. So, but between the feet, it feels like a traditional camber board, almost feels quite twinny in between the feet, so it'd be quite cool to see if we can take this through the park and see if it performs there the same as it does kind of free riding around the mountain. Let's give it a go. Run 2, K2 Antidote. Let's take it for a little jib lap, see what we can find. So far so good. It was fun as a freeride board. Let's see how it does as freestyling. Ew. Ooh. Ooh, it's smooth. It glides nicely. Oh, the board's smooth on the jib. I'm not, but the board is. Woo! On the bumps. Oh, that's nice. It's pretty smooth. Really smooth through the bumps. Ah! Yeah! Woo! It was hectic. How bumpy was that? This thing handled good through the bumps though. Woo! Alright, park's been freshly raked. Time to take this through the big jump line. Have a little hit, see what it does on the jump line. So far so good in the park. Yeah, freshly raked, so, and a bit of salt, so it'll be interesting on the takeoffs, and then slush fest in between. So let's see what happens. Ooh. Bit of ping. Oh, bit of ping from the rake. I don't blame the board for that one. Woo-wee. That was entertaining.
Can it possibly live up to the hype? The K2 Antidote. It is from the design hand of Jay Stone, working with Sage Kotzenberg to build a board for Sage for natural selection. I mean, that's a big ask in itself. You had a lot of fun on this board though, didn't you?
I did have a lot of fun on this board, and I had high expectations on this board because I can sort of relate to Sage's riding. I absolutely adore his style and just the way he attacks a mountain. And also the spec and the things that were in here actually lived up to something that I don't usually traditionally ride. But then if I break this into two elements, I do. In the middle, this is a classic freestyle weapon. You know, like there is camber, it's pretty twin, but then I think it's slightly set back, if I remember correctly, 1.9 centimeters set back. But then once you get to the tip, at the end of the effective edge, all of a sudden you've got a slightly different nose and tail, and your mind switches to a freeride board, and it actually has both elements of that, and I was pleasantly surprised by my first laps. And
you've got this 3D contour spooning the nose at that effective edge point, so you've got that really smooth freeridey initiation of the turn.
Definitely, it was silky smooth, and it was silky smooth through crud and bumps as well, which was quite amazing.
Well, give them a look, because you've got those carbon stringers. I mean, this thing's been properly uprated, hasn't it? You've got full length carbon stringers vertically, but then you've got, I think they call it the K2 dark web under the inserts. So you've got that torsional stiffness as well.
Torsional stiffness, but it wasn't as stiff as I was expecting. I feel like the stiffness was there, but it was super fluid and super silky, which was rad. And it's kind of what I come to. I've definitely ridden a few K2s in my past, so it's definitely got those personalities of some of the other ones, but it's almost at a high end, at a very high end of that.
Well, when we first impressions, when we looked at this one, we saw that it was 8 out of 10 flex. What did you say?
Yeah, I would say it's almost there. It's not as stiff as I was expecting when it said 8, because we both know there's no such thing as a 10 apparently when people rate things.
Well, that was what I was getting at. Like an 8 out of 10, no one makes a 10 out of 10. So an 8 out of 10 is kind of the stiffest board you can buy.
Yeah,
and
unless you're custom racing, it's pretty much in this range, definitely the stiffest board, you know, within their range. And you know, it had that hold in the back of the edge, it had hold through all the edges, so it was there.
And there was no chatter, you said, as well?
No chatter, very fluid and silky, and then I jumped on my first rail and surprisingly silky.
Well, this is where it gets interesting, because K2 say Sage's freeride board of choice, and it got a 6 out of 10 for rails on their billing. You thought it was epic on the rails though?
I think just between the effective edge, it was a freestyle board, like a classic wicked weapon, and relates to quite a lot of their top end freestyle boards. And then it's only when you actually take it out of the park that you realize you're on a freeride board, which has a slightly different nose and tail. And all of a sudden, as soon as you are out of the park, you forget that you're on a freestyle board, but everything's kind of a go on it.
The one question, I suppose, you'd mentioned, like the responsiveness of this, it would work brilliantly in steeps for big mountain stuff, but I suppose there's a question mark around whether, if you got past boot deep snow, whether you'd get enough float out of something like this.
It is a classic camber board in between the feet with a lot of tech and a lot of smooth stuff going on in there. But you know, if you are, you know, used to going to something slightly deeper in the way of snow, and then you're starting to get into your rocker and things like that, then this is a camber board. So you can set it back, and it definitely has the nose to match to make that happen, but it is a camber board, you know, if you are free riding. On mountain, in crud, it'll be absolutely amazing, in my opinion, and that's the type of board I would want to be riding on that. On that everyday board, I have no idea what I'm going to do kind of day. But at the same time, in deep powder, you know, if I was going to get a classic power board for Japan or something like that, I'd probably have a tiny bit of rocker in there.
Every single manufacturer is chasing the holy grail of snowboards, in that they're looking for a quiver killer. From what you've described over the course of your runs, this is pretty close. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'd say this does 90% of any kind of riding that I could ever want to do. And the last 10% being very niche. Slow end jibbing, probably haven't quite got the softness and flex in that. And that high end, waist deep powder. It'd probably be sweet, to be honest, but when you start to get into that really deep powder, especially if the powder gets a little bit sticky, you might want a little bit of rocker, but that's just in my personal opinion, to be honest.
Okay, so they say it's Sage's free ride board of choice. Who's it for?
Most definitely Sage, and definitely anyone that wants to have a bit of fun like Sage. So I would say this is anyone that's sort of intermediate to advanced. This thing is a weapon. It's silky smooth, smoother than I expected, but I do come to expect that from a brand like this. That the tech that it's got in there actually lives up to the hype, and it kind of does.
Okay, K2 Antidote, a serious piece of kit.